Hello, we'd like to welcome Lisa Lewtan this afternoon to Talks at Google. Lisa is a health and lifestyle coach, the founder of Healthy, Happy, and Hip, an award-winning author, and the host of Busy, Stressed, and Food-Obsessed Radio on VoiceAmerica.com, which is named after her book. Using the skills she developed as a successful technology entrepreneur, Lisa self-hacked her own mind and body to restore her health and then go on to feel better than ever. With private coaching, online courses, workshops, and retreats, Lisa helps highly successful go-getters to slow down, chill out, develop a better relationship with food and stress, look good, and feel great. To learn more, you can visit healthyhappyandhip.com. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Joyce. Was there ever a time of your life where you thought you were so cool, only to look back and think, was I out of my mind? For me, it was August 1994. I was 31 years old. I see you doing the math. I had just had my second baby, and I was working at a tech company. It was a tech company that I co-founded with my boyfriend, who, yes, was now my husband. We just moved into our first house in the suburbs. There I was, in my new house, nursing my newborn baby son. I had a phone kind of stuck in between my shoulder and my head because I had a few things going on at work that, just couldn't wait for, till later. And I had my arm pointing to some BU students that I just hired for the day to help unpack some boxes so that I could focus on the office. All while my daughter was, reading Goodnight Moon or something, like by my leg. It was multitasking at its finest. I had mastered it. Woo-hoo! 3 days later, I ended up in the emergency room. And my life would never be the same. I'm here today to share my story with you. It's a story that I talk about in my book, and it's a story that eventually led me to write the book. And it's a story that could actually change your life. Let's go back to the beginning. I grew up in New York. I was one of 4 kids, 2 girls and 2 boys. And in my family, they didn't care about how rich somebody was or how pretty they were. It was all about how smart they were. I think it was like an Eastern European thing. Anyway, it was very clear also in my family that the boys were really smart. I was smart, but they were smarter. And truth be told, they were really smart. Like one ended up going to MIT and the other one ended up at Wharton. And it made me feel like even though I was smart, I just never was going to be smart enough. Another thing in my family, and maybe you can relate to this one, was tears were weakness. Keep it together, hold it together, be tough. And so when my report card would come and I'd take the walk of shame to my dad's office, and I'd be like holding back the tears because I got a B, I learned how to not cry and to be tough, keep it all together. I had a lot of ambition growing up. I wanted to be somebody really big. But I always remember my parents saying to me, don't get your hopes up too high. You might be disappointed. And another thing that they always said to me again and again was, don't be a quitter. And I took these things very much to heart and carried them with me. And so by the time I got to be an adolescent, I just didn't feel so great. I thought about it. I was smart, but not smart enough. And I was skinny, but that felt not that interesting to me. I looked around at the other kids at school, and they were athletes and dancers and musicians, and I was none of those things, and I felt that I was not good at anything. In fact, I thought I was inherently boring. I might even be the most boring person on the entire planet, I thought. And I can laugh about that now, but at the time as an adolescent, it was extraordinarily painful. I literally felt like I had a big sign on my head. You're not good enough, you're boring, you're a loser. And I know you know what I'm talking about, because we all have that I'm not good enough thing in some flavor or another. And so I needed to hide because these feelings were so painful for me, and I didn't know what to do with them. And so I started to get busy. And I just started doing more and more things. And it was fascinating, because the more things I did, the less time I had to think about all those horrible thoughts. And then something else amazing happened. I had all these cool things to talk about because I was doing so many things. It was like this crazy win-win. And so by the end of high school, I was a class officer. I was working at Sichuan cuisine Chinese takeout. I was on Kickline. I was planning the prom. I was founder of the Greco-Roman Culture Club. I was that annoying girl that was in charge of everything. And you know what? I was finally good at something. And so, around the same time, I started getting these weird mystery ailments. Started off first, there were hives that would come and go, really itchy red things. And my mom would say, oh, it's just stress, honey, don't worry about it. Later on, I started getting these horrible stomach aches. Yes, worse than childbirth, I can say now. And I would be rushed to the hospital. They would do tests, and I'd start vomiting violently all over the place. And they thought my appendix burst. But it hadn't, and they didn't know what was wrong. And they'd send me home. And my mom would say, it's probably just stress, honey. And so I learned that stress was something that wasn't a big deal. Stress was something that could just be ignored. I went off to college, which I've now renamed Superwoman Training Academy, because while my friends were out partying and having fun, I was majoring in being busy. By the time I was a senior in college, I was going to school full time. I had 3 separate part-time jobs, totaling over 40 hours a week. I took a class at another college nearby in fashion just for fun, because I liked it, and they didn't offer it at my college. And my roommate and I were designing these like decorative accessories just for fun on the side. I was insane, but it was the only way to stay sane for me, because it helped me distract all those awful feelings of I'm not good enough. And I had so much to prove. I thought it was to my parents, but it was really to me, that I was smart enough and that I could suck it in and that I was going to be somebody and I wasn't going to be a quitter. Luckily, I learned how to ignore stress. Well, it worked out really well, because a year after I graduated college, I was selling software to the fashion industry in New York, 2 things that I loved. My boyfriend, he was up here in Boston, and he quit his banking job. And he started teaching himself a new thing called DBase 3. It was on an IBM PC, and these were pretty new around then. And so when the bank hired him back as a consultant, he got this project that was going on. And he got tired of our back and forth New York-Boston thing. So he said, please, please, please move to Boston just for 1 year. I promise we'll move to New York when it's all over. Now, I loved my job. And I loved New York. But I loved my boyfriend. And so off I moved. There was no tech for the fashion industry in Boston, and the tech for other industries at that time was for mainframe computing and mini computers. It was really boring. So I went to the headhunters and said, I can sell. What can you find me? And they said, come work for us. No, I wasn't interested. And so when my boyfriend said, I think other people might need databases, this is kind of a new thing, can you help me sell my services? I thought, it's for 1 year. What the hell? And so I said, sure. And in 1986, Lewtan Technologies was born. I was 23 years old. Stuart was working at the Bank of Boston. We hired a couple of contractors, and I set up our first office at the Statler office building in the Back Bay. It was 200 square feet. I had a desk, I had a computer, and I had a phone, and that was it. The only software that we had heard of at the time was called Lotus 123 and WordPerfect word processing. That was it. Can you imagine life without Google? So tech in the 80s was crazy. We didn't have cell phones, we didn't have email, we didn't have laptops, we didn't have Google. I can't even imagine our life before Google. And we didn't have respect. Today, when kids in their 20s start a tech company, venture capitalists are like, woo-hoo. Not then. We would walk into a meeting with bankers. We had ended up in this field called asset securitization. It was this banking area. We provided software. And they would look at us, and they see these two kids, and they would walk out the door. My Superwoman training came in really, really handy, because as our company grew, from 20 people, 30 people, I had to wear a lot of hats. And I was doing everything. I was doing sales and marketing, contract negotiation, because we were a bootstrap company, and we couldn't afford lawyers. I did the accounting and the finance, the hiring, human resources. And let me tell you something. When you had to hire people, really smart people, to work really long hours for really little pay and no equity, that was tough. But I did it. I did all the facilities planning, because we moved every year, year and a half as we were growing, all the event planning. It was endless. And our typical days, we would drag ourselves to work, grab something at Au Bon Pain, eat it at our desk, bring in some pizza because there were no healthy options around, eat it at our desk, maybe go out to dinner at night. Many nights, however, truth be told, we would get a pint of Ben & Jerry's fish food ice cream and eat it with 2 spoons. And then we'd go, blah, 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 fall asleep, get up, do it again, and again, and again, and again. The stress was relentless. We had no free time at all. Stuart worked 7 days a week. I worked 6 days a week. And the day off, I was doing laundry and paying bills. Nothing fun. We didn't have any time for friends, which was a good thing because I didn't really have any friends. I moved to Boston, never had time to make any. We didn't have any money because all the money we were making, we were putting right back in to fund our company. There were times we even went to our savings account and took out our wedding money to pay employees because quitting just wasn't an option. And we didn't have time for fun or rest or self-care. Now, truth be told, this was the 80s, and I don't even know if self-care existed, the term. But even if it had, I wouldn't have done it because I was too busy. And then there was the female factor. Now, I know there's all sorts of issues for women now with equal work and equal pay, but there were other issues too, and I think many of them still exist today. I would go to these banking conferences, and there would be 500 men in the room, and I would be the only woman. Now, some women might have thought, hey, that's kind of cool, but not me. I looked around, and I thought, I shouldn't be here. I am not smart enough to be here. I want to be invisible. And I literally walked around like this. I had no female mentors. Women in my mother's generation never worked. Women my own age were still in entry-level jobs. They weren't running tech companies. We didn't have networks. We didn't have online communities. We had nothing. And so I had that super pressure that I put on myself. Don't quit. Suck it up. Be somebody. And I kept going, wearing my Superwoman cape, and kept going and going and going till I got pregnant. I remember we'd finally got an inter-office email. I emailed Stuart. Just working on this proposal. I swear it'll be done soon, and then we'll get out of here because the contractions are starting. We rushed to FedEx, and we made it just at the 7:00 p.m. cutoff. Grabbed a bite at a restaurant next door, and the contractions were going like crazy. And 24 hours later, I was a mother. I was an exhausted, terrified mother. I was a mother who had never changed a diaper. My baby cried all the time. She was hungry. I was feeding her all the time. I was a mess. I was so tired and exhausted. My husband looked at me and thought, never seen her like that before. My mom, who had come to help, looked at me and thought, I've never seen her like that before. And so I hid in the bathroom pretending that I was taking a sitz bath, where I was really negotiating a contract with Ford Motor Corp that I had left off 2 days earlier. 2 weeks later, I went to the doctor. They looked at the baby and they looked at me. They wrote on her chart, failure to thrive. Apparently, I had been so depleted that I was starving my child. I wasn't making any breast milk. Although they wrote on her chart, failure to thrive, the truth is, I was failing to thrive too, but I was too busy to notice. I came back, I rushed back to work as soon as I can, somewhere that I could feel competent. But things had been growing and I had a different role. Suddenly, we had hired 2 people to take my job. I couldn't travel, I couldn't stay late. I couldn't do all those things. When I was at work, all I could think about was my baby. And when I was with my baby, all I could think about was I was screwing up at work. I couldn't win. On the outside, people think, what a hot shit. Young, new child, running this tech company, woohoo, she's got it together. But on the inside, I was a mess. I had no friends, I had no life, I was so sad, I had no time for me, and I felt like I just wasn't good enough. It's just stress, don't be a quitter. And so I kept going and going and going. And a couple of years later, it was time for baby number 2 and a new house. There I was. We just moved into our new house. I was nursing my newborn son. I had the phone in between my head and my shoulder, because I had some stuff to get done at the office. My hand was pointing. You know where I'm going, right? But you don't know how I got there. A couple days after we moved into our house, we packed up the kids and we went down to New York for my brother-in-law's wedding. My daughter was going to be the flower girl. My husband was the best man. I stuffed my postpartum body into that black gown. I got the hair done. I put on the lipstick, the bracelet, the sandals, and all of a sudden, time stopped. My hand started tingling. Started moving up my arm. I got really dizzy. And I noticed I couldn't see peripherally. I was rushed to North Shore Hospital. I was hysterical crying. Here I was in this gown with mascara streaming down my face. I was a mess. I had no idea. I felt like I was an alien in my own body. I'd always kept it together. I always had been okay. What the hell was going on? I cried because my daughter was so excited. She was supposed to be the flower girl. And I cried because my husband, who was supposed to be the best man, was right there. And notice he happened to have the wedding ring in his hand. I cried because I didn't know what was going on, and I was terrified. 5 hours later, the resident said to me, "A woman your age can't lose her peripheral vision. I don't know what's wrong with you. It's probably just stress. I think you're going to be okay." But I was not okay, and I knew that I would not be okay. And with those words, he broke me. For 2 years, 2 whole years after that night, I had repeat incidents again and again and again. I called them wavy gravies. They'd come on, I'd get tingles, I'd get lights, I'd get dizzy and cry, and then a minute later I was fine. And sometimes I had these episodes up to 10 times a day. Here I was. I had a baby, I had a toddler, I had a new house, I had a business, and I had a husband who was still working 80 hours a week. What I didn't have was any support. I had no family nearby, I had just moved and I had no friends. I found somebody to help with kids, but nobody to help with me. It never occurred to me. Doctors were frustrating beyond belief. They just couldn't tell me what was wrong with me. They kept writing me prescriptions, and I kept refusing to take them because they couldn't tell me what was wrong with me, and it was driving me insane. But because I was taught, don't be a quitter, I kept going and going. I kept going to work. I kept going home. I kept going through the motions, all the while praying that they would find a brain tumor and just to put me out of my misery. And it's around then I met my best friend. She was really sweet. She was always there for me, and if I just needed a break or something, she showed up. Always exactly what I needed her to be. Her name was food. Food has a way of doing that, doesn't it? It can be your confidant, your best friend, your lover, whatever you want it to be. And for some people, it's not food. For some people, it's wine, or shopping, or gambling. For me, food came at the right time. I started thinking about food all the time. Breakfast, I started thinking about lunch. At lunch, I started thinking about dinner. It became a source of pleasure for me. It wasn't that I was eating it all the time, but I was thinking, I was obsessing about it all the time. It was like there was an Instagram feed going through my brain of delicious, yummy things that I could dream about. It was pleasure. It was this fantasy world in a world that seemed too hard for me to deal with. I eventually got tired of being tired. I got sick of being sick. I thought to myself, there's no WebMD, there's no Google. I didn't really think that then, but I'm thinking that now. What am I going to do? And then it occurred to me, I'm an entrepreneur. We come up with creative solutions. And so I took the matters into my own hands and I looked at it like a project. I started reading books and books and books on anything that I could find related to the topic. I looked at the prescriptions that the doctors had prescribed, trying to understand what it was that they had meant to treat in the first place. Xanax? What? I was so confused. I researched family histories. Grandma had a nervous breakdown? I was so confused, but I started connecting dots and connecting more and more dots, and then the craziest thing happened. Somebody told me there's this weird thing that happens called an ocular migraine, that you get these flashing lights and weird stuff. And so I started reading about migraines. And in this one book about migraines by Oliver Sacks, it said, people who get migraines when they're adults sometimes had stomach aches when they were teenagers, where they would get very violent stomach aches with vomiting. And I was like, oh my God! The first mystery ever of my life was solved. I called up my parents screaming. And then I knew from that moment that every single thing that had gone on in my body, there was an answer for it, and I was going to find it. I started planning experiments, and I figured it out. In my case, I had severe exhaustion. Duh. I had crippling anxiety. Who knew? I always sucked it up. And this weird disposition to migraines. Now, in my case, it was ocular, abdominal. I never even had a headache. But so now that I knew what had gone wrong, how did I make it right? There were no coaches. There were no books on this stuff. There was no Google. And so I thought I need to just start experimenting. Of course, I was still going to work, still taking care of my kids. And I started paying attention to my own body. I started experimenting. Food and stress and breathing and relaxation and positive thinking. And you name it, I paid attention and I experimented. I hacked it. Now you'll notice I separated sugar from food because I don't think of sugar as a food. I think of sugar as a drug, a very powerful drug. And I figured out that I kind of needed to slow down and stop being a superhero. Now you might think that's really obvious, but it's never obvious to ourselves, right? It's obvious to everyone around us. This was shocking for me. Never even occurred to me. And what a difference it made. Stopped getting the wavy gravies. I had more energy, joy. I had a third baby. And it was finally time for me, after 12 years, to leave Lewtan Technologies. I continued my hacking, and I continued my passion with health and wellness. And eventually I said, I'm going back to school. I studied holistic nutrition, and I became a health and lifestyle coach. But 3 months into going back to school, the strangest thing happened. Clients started showing up. They were successful, powerful go-getters. They were so smart, but they didn't know how to relax. They didn't know how to calm down. They didn't know how to take care of themselves in a way, and thought they might be burning out. Sound familiar? And I understood it in a way that only somebody that's gone through it could really understand it. And so I started my company, Healthy, Happy, Hip, and I started offering them courses and retreats and all sorts of programs to help people with this issue. And then I wrote this book, Busy, Stressed, and Food Obsessed, so that I could help more people, and I started hosting a radio show so I could interview other health and wellness rock stars and bring that knowledge to my people as well. Now, the name of the book is Busy, Stressed, and Food Obsessed, but you can fill in the blank. Are you wine obsessed? Are you prescription drug obsessed? We all use these things to distract. I didn't want to think about my life, and originally I distracted with being busy. Later on, I distracted with food. Many of us are distracting. What are you distracting with? So how do you not end up like me? Don't do what I did. Don't ignore your warnings. Your body's talking to you. When something's wrong, it means you need to listen, or you'll end up injured or sick. Don't live in stress mode all the time. We're not supposed to do that. We need to bring it down. Take a break. Don't isolate yourself. Surround yourself with friends, support, and don't sacrifice that fun and tranquility. It nourishes your soul in a way that nothing else can. Connect your own dots. Investigate what's going on in your life. What's working for you? What's not? Do these experiments. What happens if I eat differently? What happens if I go to bed a little bit earlier? What happens if I remove the sugar from my life? And look inside. Look at your own baggage. I was holding on to that stuff. I'm not smart enough. I have to suck it up. I'm not a quitter. I want to be someone. I thought it was trying to make my parents happy, but it was my own stuff. In some ways, you guys have it much easier now. You can work from anywhere. You got role models, you got mentors, you got this amazing startup culture. You got tools and apps and coffee bars. It's really fun. But in a lot of ways, harder now. You've got social media coming at you from everywhere. And the fact that you can work from anywhere, you're more reachable than ever. You guys, you can't turn it off for a minute, can you? We live in this frenetic, crazy culture. Everybody wants instant gratification. And we really don't know how to turn off that adrenaline rush. But that is why it is more important than ever for you to slow down and listen to what your body wants to say. Let your body know that it is not in danger. Let your body know that you have a choice in how you want to respond to this environment that you're in. Don't be afraid of the feelings. I used to run as far as I could away from them. Now I invite them to tea. I listen. what are you here to teach me today? What can I learn from you today? I know how hard it is to bring it down, and I designed a little 1-minute tool for my clients that I'm going to share with you really quickly. If you have a phone or a book, grab it. Anything rectangular will do. And you're going to work with me. I'm going to give you a quick demo. We're going to say in, hold, out, hold. Touching something makes a really big difference. In, hold, out, hold. And then we're going to slow it down. In, hold, out, hold. And then we're going to close our eyes and say the words to ourselves. I'll demo it once, and then you can all do it with me. That was roughly 30 seconds. Doing it for 1 minute literally can bring your body out of stress mode, can clear your brain and set you up for a meditation practice. For those of you who did it take your mind away for just a second? The combination of the tactile touch and the saying in, hold out yourself seems to work very well for people who have trouble quieting their brain. So in 2004, 18 years after we started Lewtan Technologies, we sold it. And I'm very grateful to say we made a lot of money doing so. And I know that doesn't always work out that way. So I'm particularly appreciative. A couple of years later, Stuart went on and founded another business, another tech company called Zintro. I went on, eventually started my business, Healthy, Happy, and Hip. 2 of my kids so far work in tech already, and my third is in college, and she'll end up in tech too, no doubt, maybe even here. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm still really busy. I'm really busy, and I'm doing a lot of cool things. And that overwork kind of mentality, it definitely creeps up, that workaholic thing, and I have to really be careful about it. But I'll never, ever go back to that place. I will never let myself ever get back to that place, that dark, dark place, and I'll tell you why. Every single day, I take time to look inside. I take time to slow down, to connect with my body, with my mind, with my spirit, and ask them, what do you need to be okay? And I listen. And when I need to rest, I rest. And I fill my body with the most wonderful, highest quality foods that I can get my hands on. And I don't obsess about food anymore because I'm filling my life with joy and with friendship and all those yummy things that nourish us. But the most important lesson that I have learned, the most important lesson that I want to leave you with today is that I know for sure that I am, and that I always have been, good enough. And so are you. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for coming here and talking about your book. I really look forward to reading it. So last night I told my wife, oh, there is this person coming who wrote an amazing book, and I looked up the reviews on Amazon, and there's something about, sugar and food as an obsession and mindful eating and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, that sounds interesting. What is the book about? And I said, well, I don't know, I'll find out. So my question for you is, when I meet family or friends and I say, hey, I read this amazing book, I think you would also enjoy it, and they say, that's great, what is it about? It's about How would you summarize it?
So that's a great question. And I really focused on one part of the book because I felt like it was something that you all could really relate to really well, this busy, stressed. And that's how I ended up being in this field of health and wellness. And the book shares a lot of my personal stories and struggles, but it gives you a step-by-step strategy for looking inside and experimenting with your own mind and body to understand who am I as a person and who am I as an eater, and how to experiment to find out what is going to make you personally thrive. Now, because I do work a lot with food, I did talk about food a lot, but as I mentioned, this could really apply to just about anything.